Welcome to Bending Over Backwards with James Adkins. I'm your host, Dr. James Adkins, where each week we take a deep dive into what it takes to break through barriers and change the game, whether that's in medicine, business, or life. Today I'm visiting with Laura Madden, who is a mixed media artist who combines luxury with sustainability and fine art, if you can believe that. She is a transplant from Boston, and she has a great story. She's actually changed her career later in life, and I want to talk about that today. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm thrilled. Thank you.
So take me back along, your development. You didn't start out as a leader in the field of sustainable art and in fashion. I know you come from a long list of fashionistas. Your grandmother was a fashionista. Your mother was. But then you moved from health and wellness into this field. So share with us some of those points along the way.
Yeah, it's been quite an interesting journey. I think, when I look back as as far back as I can remember, my childhood dream was to be a fashion designer. So that was always like my first love, my first obsession. So that was always there, that affinity for aesthetics. And, you go through life and life shapes you. And I was always very creative, but I never valued that. It was just something I did. And I decided along the way to go to school for kinesiology and physiology. And I did that. I stuck it out for 15 years.
Yeah.
And I feel like my creative side was really like itching. It was there. It was an idea. And so slowly I started to venture into more creative endeavors. I moved into styling, personal shopping, and then more like blogging, influencer stuff. And slowly, I made my way to art. And, it's been a very interesting journey. It was almost like something I couldn't outrun anymore because it was something that was kind of like in the back of my mind for a very long time. But, all of a sudden, I guess the stars aligned and it came together.
So you weren't sure that this could be a career because you were artsy when you were young, but then you took more of a conventional route into a secure job, into more kinesiology, personal training, lifestyle coaching. And then you had to veer into fine art.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And it's funny because that's exactly what I went to school for, to get a sustainable, reliable, safe career. And, growing up in Boston, we always went to these, world-class museums, but, learning about artists in Boston as a child, they were like fantasy. They weren't even like real people. They were, mostly they were all deceased, and they really were like these characters, and it was almost like they weren't real people. So no, I never saw that as an actual career path. That was an opportunity for me. And
then something changed. You moved here. That was part of it.
Yep.
Am I correct?
Yes.
You moved here.
Yeah.
And what was the light bulb? What happened?
I think it was a little bit of a snap decision, but I moved here and it was like all I wanted to do was make art. And I actually, for the first time, this home we have here, it's an older home, so it actually has a lot of walls. Older homes have walls. And I thought,
not so much glass, you mean?
Yeah, not so much glass, not so much, it's an open floor plan, but there are walls.
Okay.
And I wanted those walls filled. And so I took it upon myself to create art for those walls. And I've always created art for myself my entire adult life, but it was only for myself and only for my own home, really only every time we moved, which has been many times. But, here it was like all I wanted to do was make art, and I filled those walls pretty quickly. And, there were a number of people that would come over and would look at what I did and would say things like, "Are you sure you don't want to sell this stuff? Why wouldn't you want to try this?
Share this with the world."
Yeah. And I remember thinking like, with who's going to buy it? Really. And, but also, part of the story that was interesting is that this property had a studio. It was completely dilapidated, but it was a studio that
sign.
Yeah, exactly. Immediately, intuitively, I just like took it upon myself to start creating my art in that space. And so, today that is my studio. It's still the tiny studio, but we did have to rebuild it because it was,
Filling up.
it was dilapidated.
Okay.
Yeah, completely.
And you've got a unique space in art because fine art and sustainability, those are, using reclaimed textiles, that's those are juxtaposed. So share with us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it's a little bit like fashion and sustainability. It's like they don't really go together.
No.
But I had this feeling that, if I could use items that were otherwise, discarded or disregarded, disreputable, that were no longer valued, if I could bring them back to value and reimagine them, it was almost like resurrecting them. I just thought, it's a way to have a positive impact on the planet, but also to create something unique and that is unusual, unlike what other people are doing. And the funny thing that actually happened is that, I made that commitment to just try it. And the thing that really grabbed me is that there is an unconventional aesthetic that results from using these unusual, unconventional items. And so that, I think, is what really drove that obsession for me, because I've been able to really create things that I think are avant-garde and are unusual and that set my body of work apart from what you see, I guess, in the modern, contemporary art space.
And who was, as far as did you just jump right into contemporary art? Is that modern art? Is that your space? Who are some of your mentors? Because I don't have a background in art, I never studied art. I never took an art class after, even 8th grade, I don't think I had art anymore. But something that was really interesting is that, of course, there are people who have influenced me along the way. But when I was living in California before living here, I did a painting, and I took this painting to have it framed. And this framer was also an antique dealer. He was also an artist. And this man, he really blew my mind open because he framed this piece of modern abstract art in a very ornate, antique gold frame. And so I never would have put my art with something that was so juxtaposed in styles. And immediately it blew my mind open because now this guy is mixing, he's showing me you can mix, different styles. And it really brought the art to life in a way that I had never done before. I didn't think it was possible. But the interesting thing is this man really tried to influence me and encourage me to keep painting. And he said, paint, you got to keep painting, keep going, keep doing it. And I remember thinking, this guy is really funny, because I had just landed in California and I was really ambitious, wanted to get my business going. Then I was doing personal styling and shopping. And, I thought, I don't have time. All I wanted to do was fill the space above my mantle. Sure.
I don't have time to just, have this hobby. But he really saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. And he saw how I lit up when I saw this painting framed in such an unusual way for me. And, the funny thing is, I went back a year later, we're moving, and I actually had done all these paintings. And I thought, oh my gosh, we're moving. I need to have this man frame these paintings. He was a brilliant, matchmaker here with these paintings and frames. And so I brought these paintings back and I found out he died.
Oh.
He died just like a couple months after I had met with him. And I feel like, oh my gosh, I think this guy was like a little guardian angel dropped in my path because he really, really tried to encourage me. And I just couldn't.
And you've kept that. He scripted you.
Yes.
Re-scripted you a bit.
Completely.
Have you now, is that part of your discipline? Is it something that you get up and you're going to spend a couple hours every day or several days a week?
Not every day, but as much as I can. Honestly, I don't know if it's my ambition or what, but I spend more time on probably my marketing and the business of my art than I do actually making art.
Interesting.
But an interesting thing is that man actually did influence me in a way I didn't expect, because part of my practice now is I do collect antique frames. I have a really great collection of antique frames that I will pair when fitting with modern art. And, I really love a sparse, minimal piece of modern abstract art with a very
Because a frame is such a piece of art.
It's such a piece of art, and it can be so polarizing. So it's tricky, if
Yeah.
it's something I'm selling. But some of these pieces, I get so attached to them. I don't want to sell them. They're in my own home, but then you run out of wall space, and that's a real buzzkill.
It's true. So as far as balance, I don't like to do the gender thing, but I think with females, there is, oftentimes people don't ask a man, how do you balance your life? But as I listen to coaches and podcasters, a female, it's because maybe with children or a husband or a family, or how do you navigate that space?
It's really tricky. And I mean, some days I think I really fail because I am so driven with my work, and my husband is also very driven, and we don't have children. Okay. So I think that makes it harder.
Hyper ambitious.
Yeah, it makes it harder to. It's easier to not have balance because you don't have. We just have dogs, and they're
focused on what you're doing, and you just stick with it
completely. But I will tell you, I am super. I think my background in kinesiology and physiology, that will always be with me, and so I'm very, very regimented and strict with my lifestyle. So
you look pretty fit.
I try. I have full effort here, but I do try and shut the computer off. If I'm having dinner, I try not to get on the computer again after dinner. I try to limit that screen time at night because sleep is not my strength. So I do everything I can to shut off hours before bed. But, balance is a tricky thing because I do love my work. I feel very, very fortunate that I am in a groove where I guess I can kind of work myself sometimes to the ground and still feel very fulfilled, even though I might be exhausted. Yes. There's so much of this, even the business, which is not easy for me. That's not my nature. So much of it is like a fun game.
If you can frame it that way in your mind, that's healthier. Just a game.
Yeah. It is. It really is.
And I love how you mentioned the foundation of sleep. It's so important, isn't it? I think we're all becoming aware of that.
Well, I know you're an early, you're an early riser and early to bed, right?
I'm like an old man. I go to bed at 8:30 and I'm up at 4:30
I am in
every
the
day
old
of my life.
lady club. I am in the geriatric.
Okay, well, welcome.
Yeah, I know.
Because you look pretty young. You make me feel good.
Totally fine with it. I mean, and my husband too, we probably some nights go to bed between 8 and 9. And that's just, it's our routine. And I'm up. I like to be up before the sun. Yeah. At this point in my life, I'm at peace with, I am a nerd, and that's okay. But if I'm up after the sun, I kind of feel behind.
Interesting.
Because I feel like I'm sharpest.
You are ambitious. That's a driven thought.
But you get up. Do you feel like you're sharp? I'm sharpest in the morning.
I'm better in the morning. I don't like late afternoon meetings, evening meetings. I like my meetings.
Oh my God.
I'm a lot more focused and productive in the morning, for sure. So now what challenges with sustainability and fashion, what challenges have you encountered in that space trying to?
Well, I mean, fashion has gotten so disposable. It's a little bit different if you're talking about the luxury space, because when people are spending at those price points, it's not as easy for someone to buy something, wear it once and just get rid of it. It's more of, a lifetime investment purchase, but it is so disposable. And it's one of those things that really drives me crazy. And now it's kind of bled into all areas of my life. I really try to buy things for the long term. And I like my purchases to be really well thought out. If I'm buying something, I really love it. Clothing or decor, I really love it. And, it's kind of interesting with art. A lot of people, which to my surprise, whether people realize it or not, people buy art. It's like a long-term process. It's very unlikely it's an impulse buy. I mean, it happens, but people really think about it because they see it as something they're going to live with for a long time, which is great. Because, I hope if someone buys my art, I hope they do live with it. for a long time.
Yeah, I guess it's more it's more in the textiles, the fashion. That's where there's a big problem, isn't there?
Yeah. Well, it's so interesting because there is so much waste. There's overproduction. Like these fashion brands, they have like quotas that they have to, with the factories, they have to produce a certain number of SKUs, and it's always too much. That amount almost never all sells, and so they throw things away. They landfill or they burn it. I mean, it like drives me crazy. And I think for that reason, with that background in fashion, and I just have such a love for textiles and such an affinity for them. And I think for a long time I did not throw any stuff away, textiles, or I collected fabrics and remnants. I don't know why, and I didn't know why. I think for years I didn't know why. But 2021, I just had this weird idea. It was kind of like a mad scientist moment. And I decided to incorporate the textiles into my art.
Okay.
And so now a big part of my work is more of this sculptural wall art where I'm using fabrics and, sometimes other found objects on a canvas or on, a plank of wood.
So you just source those in your everyday life. There's not some
everywhere
big,
and anywhere,
big
everywhere,
spot you go. Yeah.
anywhere. I recently acquired one thing I just started working with is leather, which has been really interesting, really challenging, but
because leather dries out, right? I mean, it probably gets crusty and hard to work with when it gets older.
Well, I don't know. I would say no. You can condition it, of course, before you use it, but I think more of the problem is the faux leather. That really does dry out and it flakes. So that's like no good. Yeah. But, all these bolts of leather I got from an upholsterer. He was closing shop, and a designer I worked with told me about this guy that he needed to get rid of this stuff. He was just going to throw it all in the land or the dumpster. And he said, if someone can come and take it, whoever can come, it'll make my life easier. So I acquired many bolts of fabric. And so I've been using that in some really fun, interesting things.
You have a big storage room.
I need a big storage room. I've got my studio, my garage. I've got a little bit of storage but that's a problem.
So where are you, are some of your pieces, I know you've done collabs with some pretty famous people in town. I won't mention their names, but I know who they are. I saw on your website. What's the next project? What are you working on now?
I actually don't have any big projects to speak of right now, but something I would love to do is larger collaborations with larger brands.
Okay.
Fashion brands, that really intrigues me. Just because fashion and art, they go together in such a really brilliant way. So I would love to have, maybe some type of an installation, a custom installation.
Hermes or Chanel.
For sure. They're on the list. Yeah. For sure. They're on the list. That would be ideal. If you have any contacts, you just send them my way.
Sure. I have one contact. I think you probably know who she is. She's a big contact in the resale community, but
yes,
fantastic.
Yes.
So what about, is your art anywhere in town that we could go see right now being displayed
Yes. Let me see. I have a display. Oh my gosh. I'm with a number of designers, but it's more their showrooms and their studios.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily open to the public. I do have some installations, but they are they're with developers.
Okay.
Buildings.
Okay.
So there are buildings that some are not even quite open yet.
Okay.
But that are going to be for sale.
All right.
So
cool.
it's kind of a revolving door. Just putting things on display for temporary times, temporary periods, and seeing how it goes.
Sure.
It's been fun.
You seem pretty socially conscious. Maybe that's living in, Boston, California. Is that how is that informed? What your art, what you're doing.
I can't say it has. There's no way it hasn't. There really is no way it hasn't. But I think from a very young age, I had grandparents that were extremely resourceful. They were Italian immigrants, and it was more for financial reasons, but they did consider themselves kind of like stewards of, not environmentalists necessarily, but stewards of the earth.
Yeah.
And I remember, would repurpose things and reuse things, and they were really pretty brilliant with how they could just, I guess, reimagine things that other people might throw away.
Sure.
So I think that definitely has had an influence on me, and I didn't realize it. But Boston, California, yeah, there's
Community.
stereotypical. But yeah, I mean, I do really care about the environment, and for me, it's really about this circular economy. How can we keep things in circulation that already exist? The resources have already been used, so I'm really mindful of using resources and just stretching the life of certain things that other people might dispose of.
We did that as a kid too. My grandfather, but he did it purely for economic reasons.
Yeah.
Baling wire to fix a muffler, crazy stuff like that. Because I grew up in a rural environment. But those things that impacts you, and it's obviously impacting you today because you talk about community and sustainability and the circular economy. So that's influenced you.
Totally.
That's really cool. And like you said, the juxtaposition with fine art and modern art that's just different.
Yeah.
I mean, these galleries are seeing a piece of old leather.
Yes. Yeah. And I don't know what it is. But for some reason I feel it's an instinctual thing of, how can I leave my mark here? Like, how can I make a difference? But how can I bring something to people, into the world that, is elevating people's lives. And that's also empowering people's lives because, art is meant to, for me, it's meant to uplift people. It's meant to be transformational. And that's what I hope people experience. And so, I'm always looking for ways, how can I do this in a different way?
And like you're as you're saying, it can affect your confidence levels.
Completely.
What you're wearing, as I'm married to a woman who's very fashion conscious, and it was so important to her for her home that it's right.
Yeah,
and
it's so important.
And it even affects, it affects your confidence level.
Completely.
A woman dressing the way she wants to dress. I mean, I was taught early in life, you look good, you feel good, you do good.
Completely.
So, even in your own home. So you must see that with your clients.
Completely. And so it's very, very similar to fashion. What you wear it can uplift you or it can bring you down. And I realized that, same with my home. And that was a big part of why I think I started making my own art for my own walls, because I knew how I wanted to feel. I didn't realize it until probably recently, what I was doing, why I was doing it, but it is so true. I think we're human beings in a modern world, in a material world. You can't not be affected. And I think I resisted looking at that for a long time because it felt superficial to me. But it's real.
It's not.
It's real. It's human nature.
Yeah. And if you feel better.
Yeah. I'm going to use all the tools. I'm using all the tools to get as confident and empowered as I can. And I'm good with that. At this point, at this age, I'm good with it.
What advice would you give a new artist that's starting out? Because you change your careers on a dime later in life. That took a lot of courage to change on a dime your career. What advice would you give someone wanting to do that?
Well, I would say do it. I wish I did it a lot sooner than I did because it was an idea in my head and it scared me so much. I was so afraid of what people would think of me. And I would just tell people to just start doing it. Take a step. Yeah, take a step. Exactly. And just really hone your craft. I can't tell you how many paintings I did that no one knew I did because I just was painting for so many years, but keeping it to myself. But I was exploring and experimenting with different things, and that shaped my style as I feel confident in today. But I would just tell people, if you
refine your craft.
Yes, refine your craft and just do it as much as you can. Just do it as much as you can and trust yourself, trust your instincts, because for so many years I didn't trust myself, even though I had that voice in my head I had that idea and it was like, oh, what if and it was like, no. People will think you're so weird. No.
Yes.
So I would tell people, trust yourself and hire a coach or, hire somebody who can help you maybe get a grasp on tools that you can employ to, get yourself doing it and doing it in a way that maybe could be your career.
Sure.
So you could be making money. It could be sustainable. and so that you really can keep doing what you love.
So if some young female is watching this or hearing this and she wants to be a fashionista, wants to design, what would be a few things about you she would be surprised or he would be surprised to find out? What are a couple things about you that are unique that someone would be surprised to learn about you?
Well, I don't know if it's surprising, because I do talk about this a bit, and it was, my past career. It was the basis of my past career quite a bit. But I shop almost 100% secondhand.
Oh, cool.
I really love vintage. I really love it. I scour. I love hunting for those special pieces, the diamond in the rough. But I shop. I shop everywhere. I will shop at Goodwill.
That's cool for young people to hear that.
Yes.
I was so broke I couldn't afford anything. So
Right.
the idea that you can have style and
you can find great stuff. You totally can. But I go to estate sales, I go to vintage stores, I go to consignment stores, antique stores. I love secondhand. And at this point, I can't not do it. It's almost a little bit of an obsession. But yeah, I shop everything I'm wearing today.
secondhand.
It is.
Very cool. That is great.
True fact.
Because it's out of reach, right? A lot of fashion can be out of reach for some
completely.
some people, some females especially, I think.
Completely.
And the idea that you can be accomplished in your career and still, I hang out in secondhand stores. I think that's a cool message.
Yes. And it's also a great way to challenge your creativity and your style, because you're dealing with such a mix of things. It's not like going to Nordstrom where everything is sectioned off perfectly. And so,
hunting.
Yeah, totally. But I shop all sizes. And
All sizes. What do you mean by that?
I will shop things that are 4 sizes too big. And sometimes there are things that I like how they fit better in an oversized look.
Interesting.
Especially if it's vintage, though.
Because that's coming back now. The shoulder pads.
Yes,
Are
there
bigger,
is.
the
There
90s
is
look.
a bit of an oversized thing going on, but also, I tailor a lot of my clothing. So if I buy it too big, I can tailor it to a perfect fit. So it's a good little tip, and it's a great way to have more of a designer look, is having a tailored look, because if you are wearing something that fits perfect to your body, it's going to look really, really luxury.
Interesting.
I think, or I hope it does.
Absolutely. So how would people find you? Let's say someone wants to find you. They want to buy your art. I want to buy a piece of your art now. I want to see it.
James, come on over.
And I have this new home with lots of space. So
Ooh, you have walls.
Yes, we have really good walls.
We're looking for walls.
Big, tall walls. So,
Seeking walls. The best place to see my work is probably Instagram.
Okay.
At Laura Madden Studio. I do have a website. I actually have 2 websites. They are very pared down right now, so it's a good way to get an example. But I am unveiling a brand new website very soon, and that's lauramaddenstudio.com.
Okay.
But still, it will be very pared down. It's a very curated selection of available work and some projects that I've worked on. So Instagram is still the best way.
Okay.
I share behind the scenes. I share some behind the scenes of my studio.
Okay.
So I give more of a complete look of what's going on with my body of work. So Instagram for sure.
Okay.
Yes.
I want to bring my wife over and look at your stuff.
Come
for
on
sure.
down.
I'm so glad
We
had
can
this
make
conversation.
a happy hour out
Yes,
of it. We
happy
do that
hour, just-
often over at my home.
Okay.
Yep,
Well, we are
it's fun.
always up for a happy hour.
It's always fun.
For sure. Well, I hope today's episode helps you stand taller in your own shoes, helps you break through and not feel that changing your career later in life is a insurmountable challenge, that many people do that. Laura Madden has done that. And I hope today you find this useful.